Great. So welcome everyone to our webinar on unlocking smart spending, efficient cost control with Uber for Business. We're really excited to have you guys with us today. So thanks so much for coming and taking time out of your day to join our webinar. So topics that we'll cover today, we'll briefly touch upon the unregulated challenge of ground transport in your T&E expenses. Then we'll go into detail about how to make business travel more efficient, compliant, and sustainable. And our team will take you through our Uber for Business dashboard, like a walkthrough, as well as cover some tips there as well on how to save some costs. And then lastly, we'll also cover how companies, including Uber, are using the Uber for Business dashboard to save on costs and improve on productivity as well. Just some things to note, this session will be recorded, so we will be sending out the recording afterwards as well. So that you have it there. And then this was initially planned for an hour and a half, but I don't think we'll be using the full time. So we hope to finish this off in about an hour or just over, and we will have a Q&A section at the end as well. So today's speakers, so we have Nick on the call with us, who is our head of enterprise sales in the UK for Uber for Business. We also have Bhavna on the call, who's our EMEA strategic operations manager. And then myself, I work in the marketing division for Uber for Business here in EMEA. So we're excited to take you through the webinar today. First things first, get your questions ready. We do have a Q&A section. So do pop your questions in throughout the webinar, and then we'll address them at the end of this session. Also look out for a poll that should be popping up on your screens anytime now. So do please submit for that as well. And stay tuned until the end for a chance to win an Uber voucher too. So let's dive right in with cost control. Let's talk about cost control. So as we know, cost control is a big consideration for enterprise companies worldwide, including UK businesses. So according to the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, 75% of UK businesses rank travel cost control as a top priority for their travel programs. And it is also estimated that on average, £1.2 billion is lost annually by UK businesses due to inefficient travel management. But saying that, companies can save up to 30% on travel expenses if proper cost control measures are put in place, based on a report by the Institute of Travel Management. So having said that, ground travel remains an unregulated T&E line item for companies. In 2023, businesses globally spent around $165 billion on ground transport alone, according to a GBTA survey. And 43% of business travel managers list cost savings as a significant concern for them in their day-to-day lives, with rising fuel prices as a top concern. And UK travel managers, on average, spend around 30% of their travel spend on public transport, 20% on taxis, and 14% on private hire vehicles. It's also another concern that a lot of travel managers are looking for more sustainable ride options for their employees, and that some of that is lacking. So why is travel spend regulation important? Why does it matter for companies around the world? Well, it helps to ensure policy adherence and compliance. It also helps to offer more visibility of spend across an organization. It also ensures that companies meet their duty of care obligations to their employees. It can also help with CO2 emissions tracking. And in general, it helps travel managers to save on time as well. So how can Uber for Business help? I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Bhavna, who's going to take you through the Uber for Business platform and how we can help with cost savings.
Thanks, Kami. Hi, everyone. I'm Bhavna Surapneni. I am the Strategic Operations Lead for Business Travel in EMEA. My priorities include building solutions which improve our clients' day-to-day experience. I'm quite excited to share some insight into how Uber for Business can help you meet your goals. First, let's start with a quick overview. Uber for Business, or U4B as we like to call it, was founded in 2016 to help organizations better manage their rides, meals, and local deliveries, all by leveraging the power of the Uber platform. More than 170,000 organizations in 70+ countries use the platform for a variety of use cases, as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide. From business travel to event solutions, Uber for Business is here to help. Let's move on to the next slide, please. I am looking at Kami, can we move on to the next slide?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm looking at the poll results, and I see that For 60% of you, reducing business travel costs is the top priority. And for another 30% of you, you're looking for ways to optimizing current spend. So here are some cool stats about how our clients have benefited from U4B's suite of products. 84% of our customers agreed that U4B enabled them to better manage spend. And 73% of customers highlighted that U4B helped them lower their ground transportation costs. How did they do that? Through better compliance. Staying on compliance, 84% of customers highlighted that U4B enabled them to better enforce compliance. Let's move on to the next slide. Yeah. Now let's talk about the specifics. Here's how your company can benefit from our varied offerings. 100% transparency, get complete visibility and smart insights on the Uber for Business dashboard, which you can access anytime. You can track usage and monitor spend. Number 2, you're completely in control. You can choose what benefits your employees can avail based on the controls you set at the beginning of your Uber for Business journey. It's important to note that you can easily log into the dashboard at any point and modify these controls on your own. Number 3, you get to benefit from our enhanced service offerings. Get access to 24/7 business support and duty of care features for increased peace of mind. And lastly, our advanced API integrations make expensing and onboarding very easy and seamless. I will share some more light into some of these topics in the coming slides. Let's move on to the next slide. Thank you. Let's talk about transparency. I am a firm believer in this phrase. If you do not know, you cannot solve it. The Uber for Business dashboard allows you to access meaningful insights for admins and travel managers. Using the charts available, you can understand who your top spenders are, what cities your employees are traveling the most in, and most importantly, you can keep a close eye on the spend versus your budget. You can also download detailed reports and synthesize results for your leadership. I'm sure Nick will be covering some of these in his demo shortly. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Let's talk about custom controls. Policy adherence is one of the most exciting features of the Uber for Business platform. You can enforce your company's T&E policy by setting usage parameters around trip allowance, pickup and drop-off locations, time, etc. Yeah, let's move on to integrations. So there are 2 significant ways our advanced integrations can simplify your life. Number 1, automated expensing. Did you know that ground transportation is usually one of the top 3 expensed items on any expense platform? So U4B is here to simplify expensing for you. U4B has partnerships with leading expense providers, as you can see on the right-hand side, which helps you reconcile expenses automatically. According to a recent GBTA report, it takes 20 minutes to file an expense report, and 19% of them have errors. Wow. Imagine having to, correct those reports and reach out to the employees. So we help you minimize that hassle. With U4B, you save on both time and cost. No more lost receipts or poorly scanned receipts which have to be processed. The second type of integration which we offer is for seamless employee onboarding. You can automatically add new team members to your Uber for Business dashboard by syncing with your expense provider's employee roster. So we'll basically have the same set of employees on Concur and on your Uber for Business dashboard. 2, you'll also have the option to prompt employees to select an expense code from a list before requesting a ride or a meal. Now I'll just pass it on to Nick, who will actually do a terrific live demo of the dashboard and also showcase all of these things which we just talked about. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Bhavna. Just checking, Kami, the screen. You can see the screen?
Yes, you're all good.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everybody again for your time today. So I get to take on the exciting part and show you the demo dashboard itself. So as Bhavna mentioned, it's web-based. So you go to business.uber.com when we set you up. You then have access to all trip information in real time and lots of other features and functionality, which we'll look through here as well. So first of all, you can see that on the homepage here, this is the kind of landing page. You can see spend. So we can actually take a look at this by month or by 12 months. So you can play around with the view here. You get really an insight into the activity kind of in real time as well. We'll jump into this in a bit more detail as we go through the showcase as well. So you can see trip level information again in real time based on where travelers are on the move. You can also see the employees that have been invited, those that have linked up, and those that have taken their first trip, and those that are active as well, as you can see here. So let's jump in. This is the kind of snapshots view as you log in. I'm going to take you through how we would set this dashboard up, how you can make the most of this for your program, and how ultimately you can use it to get insight to control and manage ground transportation spend. So the first thing is programs. So we would set up programs based on the requirements that you have. You can see in this demo dashboard here, we've got programs for Uber Eats and Central, which is a platform EAs can use to book for others, as well as vouchers. But the one we're going to really talk about is the travel program that you can see here. So this would be the travel program that gives people access to book Ubers for themselves when they're traveling for business. So just jumping into this, you can see here, there's different things that you can do to control and set the programs up to manage behavior and drive compliance. So one area that most customers will look at is trip type. So for example, you can actually limit the types of vehicles that different groups of people have access to. So many of our partners will enable kind of standard economy vehicles, if you like, UberX and kind of the standard selection here for all travelers, and then maybe enable the premium vehicles just to a select group of travelers as well. So we can actually deselect these and apply those settings to different groups. And then those groups will see the vehicle types that they're eligible to book. So that's a really good way to kind of drive compliance and savings ultimately. And manage what people can book where. So there are other things that we can do here as well, like expense codes. We can even limit the spend on the account. So you could say, we're going to provide a certain amount after which the employee pays, or we're going to provide an amount off a trip fare, so set a trip limit, or full coverage, which most companies will go down this route with full coverage. But again, if you wanted to set up specific programs, maybe for late night rides, or if there's a commute program where people are eligible to spend, you know, 50 or 100 pounds per day, then we can set up the program as such and set those rules and apply them in the app. So when we set these rules up, we apply them to the groups that we set up as well. We then launch the program to those people, and they will have access to the settings basically that you put in place for those groups. So let's jump into the people tab next. This is where we would actually add your cohorts of travelers. So we have different options here. You can see in this demo dash that we've invited 57 people are on the dashboard. You can see those that have accepted the invite and are active, and those that have been invited but haven't yet signed up. We've got the option to integrate with HR feeds, so Workday. We do that through an SFTP integration. We can also integrate with one login type IDP organizations as well. So basically automating the roster of people that come into the dashboard, or simply we can bulk add just by a very simple template here of first name, last name, and business email address. This also gives us the option to add in some reportable fields, for example, expense code or cost center. So basically we can set these up and they're hard coded in the employee profile. And I'll show you what the reporting looks like on that basis shortly. So we add those people to the account. For bigger organizations, like I said, we recommend doing an automated roster sync. So when people join the company, they automatically come into the dashboard here. And when they leave the company, they go out of the dashboard. For those companies that use SAP Concur Expense, we can also do a feed with your expense tool. And again, that automates when people join and leave the company, they come in and out of the Uber dashboard. So there's no kind of manual work required your side to manage this employee roster. So you can see the people that we've invited, you can see those that are active, and you can see the groups that we set up. So going back to what we said earlier, for example, Thomas in this example would have access to the settings in the general group, whereas Robin would have access to the settings in the riders group, and we can apply different settings based on level of individual, as I mentioned. So when everyone's set up, we've set up the programs, and people are using the app to make the bookings. every trip that they take comes into the dashboard in real time. So you can see various things here, but I'm going to jump into the travel example here. So we can see that Laura took a trip yesterday, and you can see the information there of pickup, drop-off, location, the time, the mileage, the amount, and so on. We can also download the receipt here. We can also contact Laura if we feel that this is a non-compliant trip or it should have been booked on a personal profile. If we do this, they actually have 30 days after the trip takes place to change the booking their side from the business profile to their personal profile, which would change the form of payment and take it out of your dashboard. The other thing is, so if I say, please change this to personal profile, if I were to send that message, that would actually block Laura's ability to book on the business profile until she had actioned that message. So it's a good way to manage compliance and ensure that people understand that there's scrutiny over these trips. And I think it's worthwhile mentioning as well that, you know, in most organizations, people will be booking Ubers anyway. If you don't have the dashboard here, you have no insight into the trip, the reasons for the trip. It's just an expense claim that you don't have that visibility on. So having visibility helps you manage and ultimately control that spend, but also puts messaging, it gives you the option to put messaging out there to individuals to say, look, we're implementing this perk or benefit of Uber for Business. However, all trips are monitored, policy will be applied or needs to be applied, and trips will be scrutinized for spend and compliance reason. We can also, at the end of each week, send an automated report to managers. So we can set up managers in the system and they receive a link basically of all of the trips that their cohort or their team has taken in that week, which again is a good kind of optics, or, you know, gives visibility to managers and also makes employees understand that there is scrutiny over the platform and spend is monitored for compliance purposes. So have all of this information here. It also gives you the option, if there's an event, like if there's some, you know, an issue in Paris or London or wherever it may be, you can actually search during a time frame for people that are in that location. So we could say, like, yesterday and today, who's in Paris, for example, or who's in London. So if there is an issue, you know, whatever it may be, having the real-time insight into exactly who is where and when is really strong. And on that point, we also integrate with ISOS. So we can automate data or transaction handoff to ISOS for duty of care and security purposes. So basically, in summary, the activity tab gives you that insight into every single trip in real time, and you can search back who's traveled where as well, and you can set the parameters here in the dashboard, as you can see. So very easy. You can also export this information to CSV, as you can see there as well. So with a click of a button, you have that detailed data again that you can see here, and there's like 70 columns of information from pickup, drop off, destination, local currency, the amount, etc. There's a lot of information there for every single trip, basically. So we've looked at how we set up programs. We've talked about how we add people to the dashboard, and we've obviously looking at the activity now. The next thing I want to jump into is insights, which I think is one of the more exciting parts of the platform. So this is basically a visual view of the data and the spend and you know what travelers are booking and giving you insight into that spend. So you can see at the top here, across the programs that we talked about, travel, meals, central, vouchers, you can dig into each of those. I'm going to focus on travel for this. So you can see here again, let's set this from the start of the year, so year to date. And we can do all countries, or you could start drilling down into UK or US or whatever. But basically, you get a view then of all of the spend during this time frame, number of trips, number of people that have traveled as well. And you start seeing graphical views of spend per month, which gives you insight. So for example, here, August, there's a big jump. You know, August is like 2 or 3 times higher than the other months. Maybe there's a reason for that, or maybe there's like activity that needs to be reviewed there. Again, it gives you the insight to understand kind of why there was such a jump in August in this example. You can then see a breakdown of spend per department, as you can see here. And again, we'd set that up in the back end. trips by time of day. You can even see trips outside of working hours. So there could be a wellness aspect to people that are taking late night trips. Or if there's a 2 a.m. trip on a Friday night, maybe that's not a business trip and maybe it needs to go back onto the personal profile. So again, it gives you that insight to make those informed decisions. The other thing is spend by different vehicle types. And I think this is really key to managing costs. UberX is our cheapest kind of entry-level product. Comfort is a high level of vehicle, but at a slightly increased price point. So again, this gives you insight into seeing that there's a significant number of comfort trips here. Maybe we should be pushing them to UberX, or really maybe we should be promoting low emission because there's only a few trips with that were green vehicles here. So again, you get that insight into spend. Breakdown by country, cities with the highest spend, airports as well. So you can start to see those trends. One area, the final kind of pieces which I think are really effective in getting a quick snapshot of compliance is outliers. So you can see here users within the time frame that we set at the top here, users with the highest spend. So we can see in this example, Mullum spent 4 times as much as the next person. Again, there may be like justified business reasons for that, or maybe there needs to be a conversation about using rail or public transport rather than taxis or whatever it may be. And we can actually jump into the activity. So we can see all of those trips that Mullum's taking, and we can start to view those trips and get that information. And again, request more information from Mullum in this example for the trip, for the different trips, and he will be blocked from booking on the business profile until he's responded to and actioned this message. So again, like, please change profile to personal, and that would take it off your dashboard. So I think outliers is really strong. And then also we have under outliers trips with the highest fare. So I don't mean to pick on Mullum, but he's here again. So you can see basically the higher fares. So in some dashboards you'll have like there'll be a trip which really should have been taken by rail, for example, and it can be quite expensive. So again, gives you that insight to manage and control behavior on the back end and have conversations with those employees as necessary. So that's the insights tab, giving you a breakdown. I won't go into all of the other areas here, but you can see exactly the same view for meals, and also the other products which we briefly spoke about as well. But I'm going to jump now into the sustainability. So this is really giving you an insight into the performance on low emission trips. Again, you can set the parameters in the date range up here and countries, and we can then start to see that 8% of trips were low emission or electric vehicles, EV. Overall miles traveled, CO2 emissions per mile, and average CO2 per mile. So all of this data is driven by Uber's green methodology, which you can access in the dashboard down here, just here, how we calculate the metrics. And then this dashboard gives you a snapshot into sustainability performance and ultimately how we can improve that. So you can see in this detailed view a year by year comparison. So April 23 versus April 24, green vehicle usage is going up. It's going up in August as well, which is good. They're the kind of trends that you want to see, of course. And then we can start seeing the CO2 emissions, total kilograms of CO2 emissions by month as well. This is going up. Again, maybe we'd want to be focusing on green usage and getting messaging out there to drive people towards green vehicles. And then you can see average CO2 emissions per mile. The pie charts here is I think this is really effective. You can see a breakdown of the 100 trips that took place. About 30% were electric, so EV. About 40% were hybrid, and the rest, about 20% were IC, so diesel or petrol. So again, like, we can work with you, and you can use this data to like push people to be booking green vehicles moving forward as well. So yeah, and you can see here as well a snapshot of the CO2 emissions avoided by taking electric trips or the EV trips. So you can see that information there. This is all exportable into Excel. So again, if you're asked by a senior manager to demonstrate or report on CO2 output for ground transport, for Ubers or for taxis, you can grab that information very quickly. Just come into the URL here, log in, get the info, and then pass it on. So it gives you that insight with a few clicks, which is really good. Finally, billing is where each month you would see a consolidated overview of spend. So we have the statement here, which I'll just open up. This is the total spend for that month. And then also we have a transactional CSV, which gives a breakdown and detail on every single trip. So I showed you a report similar to this, but basically there's 70 plus columns of information here. And this captures all of those reportable fields that we've set up with you in the program. So for example, cost center or business unit or employee ID, reason codes for travel as well, we can add in. And then all of the other information you'd expect: pickup time, date, name of person, email, and there's a link to the invoice or the receipt for every single booking in here as well. So you can see that here. You just grab that URL and then open it just in a new view, and then that gives you access to the receipt information as well. So, and just on billing, we have the option to either individual form of payment with corporate cards, which most customers that use SAP Concur or another expense tool will take, or we can do a consolidated monthly invoice, basically. So that's paid for once a month, and every booking on the business profile does not require a card. It says bill to company, and we take that route. So that's kind of really a broad overview of the platform. Hopefully it shows you how much visibility and insight you can get in this space. So again, every trip that's booked on the business profile, that data flows in real time into the dashboard, and you've got the option then to scrutinize that spend, communicate with employees, and ultimately have the insight that you need to manage and control spend, and also promote sustainable usage as well moving forward. So I think, Kami, that wraps up the demo. So I'll just stop sharing.
Yeah, of course. I'll reshare again for our presentation, and then just for our top tips as well, based on that.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great.
Walkthrough.
Yeah. So, and just this is really just to summarize what we spoke through, what we just spoke through there. So, I think the first point is that the dashboard really offers flexible settings to help you manage and control spend, and we recommend setting up the dashboard to reflect your travel policy, but also set parameters per employee type. And also, it's worth noting that the platform is super flexible. So a setting that you apply today, you can update tomorrow, you can change. It's very straightforward, and all happens in the back end. And then that reflects on the Uber app for the individual that's booking. So I think working together, setting up the dashboard to manage policy and set different parameters per user group is really important. Point two is kind of more broadly about your ground transport and fleet strategy. So we recommend, the Uber Business platform is free of charge. There's no minimum spend. There's no real controls in that respect. It's there to give you insight into Uber spend that's taking place. So it's a good option to use the platform to maybe pivot away from more expensive traditional fleet contracts or other kind of commitments that you may have. Again, the Uber platform is free, and we give you access to kind of a huge fleet across 70 countries and 10,000 cities, and you get the insight and data into that as well. The third point is utilizing the dashboard to share reports, to demonstrate savings and also sustainability performance. You have access to all of that information that I showed you within a few clicks. So it gives you that insight. Again, if management need to see a report same day on whatever it may be, sustainability performance or spend or compliance, you have access to that information immediately. So, making most use of the Insights tab and the other areas there to get a view on spend. And the final point is tailored ride options here, point 4. So we think it's really important basically to set controls and limit usage based on role, and also based on travel policy and seniority as well. And again, those controls are flexible, and we can work with you to update that. And it's also a self-serve dashboard where you can apply these controls and maybe try different things as well. And yeah, I think with that, that gives you really the option to manage spend in a policy compliant way that reflects the level of the employee or the reason for their travel as well. So I think those 4 points really are kind of key, and what I would think are the top tips to make the most of the Uber dashboard.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Nick. So off of that, I wanted to also showcase some case studies that we have prepared here on how Uber, as well as other companies, are using our dashboard to save on costs. We've picked out 3 case studies just for the purposes of time, but if you do have any questions or want more case studies, feel free to reach out to our team as well after this webinar, just via email. You know, if you just reply to the webinar invite that you got via email, then we'll get in touch with you. So the first case study up here is UniSuper. That is a superannuation company in Australia. And they utilize the Uber for Business dashboard for efficient ground transport with transporting their teams for essential face-to-face meetings. So the benefits that they got from integrating with our dashboard was they had automated expensing, which saved them a lot of time. They also had more visibility and transparency with the detailed reports that they were getting from the dashboard. And they were also focusing on their sustainability goals. So they had accurate CO2 reporting with the dashboard as well. And that allowed them to also work towards their sustainability goals that they were set within their company. And on average, they had forecasted a 20% annual cost savings on transport alone. And Paul from the Facilities and Corporate Services category said, our innovative new Uber for Business platform offers our people an efficient, effective, and accountable option to get where they need to be. So that was 20% annual cost savings on transport for this organization. Then the second case study is in automotive. So it was a large volume Honda dealership that's in the Pacific Northwest. And they were using Uber to replace the shuttle services that they had. And they were able to get some cost savings there as well compared to what they were spending on their shuttle services. So how they were using this was their service advisors were requesting rides for their customers at the dealership. And some of the benefits that they saw here was greater flexibility and extended availability of rides for their customers. They also had better insights into their costs as a whole, and it improved their customer experience. And they saw 47% of cost savings versus the shuttle that they were using at the time. And that was a $45,000 savings in a year. And Janine from the Parts and Services Director said, our dealership is always looking for new ways to stay competitive and improve our customer experience. By replacing our shuttles with rides with Uber, we've done both of these things while reducing our spend by 47%. And then the third case study that I have to share here is actually on Uber, our T&E team. So we use the Uber for Business dashboard as well to manage travel for 27,000 employees across the world. And the primary use case that Uber was using this for was for travel and meal expensing, and then integrating with systems like Workday and SAP Concur. And the benefits that the T&E team saw here was they were reducing their admin times by automating some of these tasks and also having receipt uploads be automatic. They had better control and visibility for duty of care within our organization. It also helped employees to increase their productivity because they saved time on expensing. And overall, Uber achieved $170,000 in savings in 2022 from time saved with these automated e-receipts. And Justin from the Global Expense team said, how can we automate and be efficient? Uber for Business hits the mark. So these are just 3 top-level case studies, but like I said, if you need any more information, please feel free to reach out to our team and we'd be happy to share more case studies as well. So now actually moving into a bit of a competition here, a chance to win a £50 Uber voucher. So how this will work is in the Q&A section in Zoom, if you can drop your answer, we'll be asking a question. And if you can drop your answer in the Q&A, and please do also mention your name when answering the specific question, because we can then cross-check it with our attendees so that we can reach out to you afterwards if your answer won. So the question here is, if you could use travel savings for a fun office perk, what would it be? So again, we've asked the question here. If you can drop your answer in the Q&A, our team will then decide which answer is the winning answer, and we will be in touch over email for this. Also, still continue to use the Q&A section for any questions that you have on the webinar as well. And that can be done anonymously, or you can also add your name for reference. So the question again, if you could use travel savings for a fun office perk, what would that be? Then I'm going to move over to Q&A time, so you can continue asking any questions here. I'll also stop sharing my screen, but if you want any more information, you can visit our website at uber.com/business, but you can also just get in touch with our team as well, and we'd be happy to answer more questions after this webinar too. But I'll now start our Q&A session and stop sharing the screen. All right, we have some questions that are here in the chat. All right. I don't know, Nick, do you want to maybe take some of the first ones? I can see it speaking about limits on the dashboard.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the question is, can we put limits on when, where, and or how much employees can spend on Uber trips? So absolutely. So within the program section that I showed you on the demo, we've got the option to set those parameters and controls per employee type. So basically, you can set the groups and then apply settings across those areas. So on Uber Rides, for example, like I showed you, you can limit the type of vehicle that's used, but you can also limit the amount of spend or amount of money that the company will pay towards the trip. And the way we set that up is quite good. So it doesn't limit the individual to on their trip. So for example, if the company allows late night travel, £50 limit, they can still book a ride for £70, but the extra 20 would just go onto their personal profile. So that's quite an effective way to ensure there's no disruption to the end user and also manage compliance on the company side. So yeah, absolutely. The platform is very flexible when it comes to setting controls on costs per trip. Cool. I think the next one, we've noticed some employees maybe using rides for personal reasons. How can we keep an eye on that and prevent it? So this is a good question and quite a common question as well that we see. So I think the visibility that you get from the platform gives you insight into every single trip. So first of all, through the dashboard, you can see and scrutinize every single booking. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we can set up the platform so a link goes to the line managers of the employees. So each week they can see who's taken what trip where. And we can also put kind of reason codes or messaging in the platform as well. So for example, in Uber for Business platform, the one that our platform, if we make a booking on the business profile, we select the trip, we press book, and then a screen pops up to say, please confirm this is a business booking. If not, go back to your personal profile and book there. So that's a kind of a visual reminder, but also like a compliance tick box that they've committed that this is a business trip, and they make that booking there as well. So yeah, I think there's various controls that we can put in place and reporting. I think it's worth mentioning as well that at the moment, people would just book taxis or Ubers, and there's no scrutiny over that spend because you don't have that visibility. So setting up the dashboard with the controls gives you that insight so that you can manage compliance. And then, sorry, the very final point there as well, if you believe it's an out of policy trip, you can message the rider and ask them to change to their personal form of payment. And they have 30 days after the trip to do that. And then if that's the case, it will come off of the business profile, and the form of payment will change to their personal form of payment. I can see, Carmi, another question there. So thanks for the demo. We're working on reducing our carbon footprint. Could we have a recap on the main functionalities of Uber Business that can help us track and reduce CO2 emissions from our business trips? Yeah, absolutely. So Uber has a commit. So our public commitment is to be 100% EV globally by 2040. 100% EV in North America and Europe by 2030, and 100% EV in London and Amsterdam by the end of 2025. So our fleet in London, for example, is already around 10,000 electric vehicles, I think. So that fleet alone is kind of larger than the entire fleet size of other operators in the space. So accessing green vehicles on the Uber platform is very simple. The supply is good and growing. and it's very reliable. The other great thing about green vehicles is that they're newer vehicles as well, so you get like a great level of comfort with the ride at the same price. Uber Green is the same price as Uber X, so there's no compromise on price basically as well. So I think the access to the green bookings is there in the app. We can work with you to promote that to end users as well. With some companies, we run, for example, promos, short-term promos to incentivize green usage. For example, anyone that books a green trip in the month of September would be entered into a draw to win a voucher, for example. So I think that's good to actually promote green usage to end users. And then the final piece is the visibility that you have in the dashboard. So we give you access to green vehicles, we help promote booking green vehicles, and then you get the insight and reports in the dashboard to see green vehicle usage and uptake, and also start to see year-on-year improvement when it comes to electric vehicle usage. So hopefully that answered the question. But if you had any follow-ups, please do put them in the chat here.
We're getting some more questions in, so that's great. If you don't mind, Nick, to answer some of these, because you're the subject matter expert on all things on the dashboard, so that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can see, can we set individual usage period parameters for each person? Yep, you can do that in the dashboard. That's fine. We can set kind of number of trips per day, number of trips per week or per month, or spend as well per employee. So after they've hit that cap, they won't be able to book on the business profile. So we can absolutely set individual parameters and then report on that as well. Moving on to the next question. When you message someone on the platform, does the person have to reply in the platform? How do you know they replied? Yeah, so they reply, and the reply, it goes to their email as well, and then it's an email exchange, but it's also within the platform. So there's kind of like two-way communication through email and the platform. The next question, can you use Uber on third-party platform, e.g. we use Click Travel? Would Uber work on this platform? Can we book trains and planes, hotels? So two questions there. The first one is third party. So we can put a link to Uber that punches out to the Uber platform, which we can do. However, we don't by default integrate with TMCs. The Uber platform is widely used. Most travelers would already have the app downloaded, and most people will utilize that experience in the app. And they'll have their travel folder on the phone. They'll jump in, and Uber will be one of the providers there. So generally, it's a standalone platform. But we can integrate messaging and, like I said, links to the Uber business platform through your TMC with messaging. So I think there's definitely options there. Be happy to talk about that more. And then the second question there was, can we book trains and planes and hotels? So you can at the moment, that's only on the personal profile. So we are looking at how we build out especially trains from a business perspective, but at the moment they're just on the personal profile, so it's not part of the business platform as it stands. The next question is there a chance we'd see an increase in taxi spend by implementing Uber for Business? For example, people may not expense every taxi trip they take, but this could see an increase in taxi usage. Good question. I think there's a few things to think about here. So at the moment, if you don't have the Uber platform, then you don't have visibility on spend. People just submit their expense receipts, and there's no kind of visibility into that trip. With the dashboard, there is visibility. So what we tend to see with customers is that Uber transactions increase because end users see the benefit of the platform with the expense integrations and other benefits. But they're actually their cost of taxis and cost per mile drastically reduces because Uber is still, up to 30% more cost effective than other private hire vehicle operators, and cheaper still than kind of more established taxi providers as well. So just to summarize that answer, I think when customers set up Uber Business, they tend to use Uber more, but their costs go down because Uber is a much more cost effective option. And again, we can help you demonstrate that cost per mile savings through the dashboard as well. the next question, thanks, Jazz, for this question. Does Uber Business interface directly to SAP, accounting for VAT when needed? We do. It's one of our kind of most utilized enterprise integrations is the integration with SAP Concur Expense. So there's two things there. One is the receipt integration. So anything booked on the business profile, the end user's receipt will auto-populate in Concur Expense. So at Uber, we have Concur Expense. So I make a number of, as you'd expect, I take a fair few Ubers each month. At the end of the month, go to do my expenses, and all of the trips are there, pre-populated with the receipts, the date, the time, the amount. I just press submit, basically. So from an admin perspective, I think a GBTA HRS study showed that it takes 20 minutes on average per expense claim. So if you add that up across your traveler population, you can see the efficiency gains that integration would have if you use SAP Concur Expense. The time in motion savings are huge. And there's also a compliance and benefit for the finance organization as well, because the receipt price is there and it just populates in the system. I think Bhavna also showed a slide where with the other expense providers that we work with, same process. So we work with, I think 10, 12 other expense providers with the receipt automation functionality. The second piece of the Concur integration is the roster. So we can integrate the profiles of your people into the Uber dashboard, and that keeps the dashboard fresh and accurate and up to date automatically. So there's no manual intervention required from your side. It's basically a HR feed from expense into the Uber dashboard. New hires come into the dashboard, leavers are automatically taken out. So yeah, thanks for that question. I think the Concur integration is a real benefit of the platform. I think there's no more questions that I can see in the chat, but if there are, please do add them, because we're very happy to continue the conversation here. Or if there's other areas that you wanted to look at and go into more detail on, happy to do that as well. So yeah, if there's any more questions, please do put them in the chat.
Yeah. And if not, we can always answer on email as well afterwards. We've also been collecting all of the answers as well for the question, so that's great. And we do already have a winner as well, which is, yeah. I also don't think we have any more questions on the chat here. But Ravindra, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But your answer was, yeah, we really liked your answer. Bhavna, what was the answer again? It was around theme parks.
Yeah, sorry, 1 second. It's about taking employees to a party or a theme park. I think that's a really fun way to celebrate the savings. I would say that given how much you'll save with Uber for Business, you can probably do that a few times a year. Maybe more. Yeah.
Yeah. But Ravindra will be in touch afterwards on email just to also share that Uber credit with you. So yeah, thanks so much for partaking. Yes, and then if there are, great. And if there are any other questions, that we weren't able to answer as well. So if there are, any country-specific questions, we'd be happy to, direct you to the correct team as well. This was a UK-specific webinar, but we'd be happy to direct you to the team. So please do get in touch with us after this webinar. Yeah, so thanks to everyone who joined today. Like I said, this webinar was recorded, so we will be circulating that as well to all attendees afterwards so that you can watch it back. And yeah, just let us know if you have any questions, but it was great to host you today. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Thank you.